Having the right TMS is vital in supporting freight broker growth. Partner with TIE software to optimize your processes and compete with confidence. Get into the automation, data insights, and cash flow optimization game. Request a demo at tiesoftware.com. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we are covering all things marketing and growth. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome back one of our favorite people, Sean McGillicuddy, the Chief Revenue Officer at TIE. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again, Mary. Good to see you.
I'm very excited about this because for those who have been following along, Sean got a little bit of a title upgrade from his last appearance. So welcome, sir. I'm so happy you could make time for us today.
Oh, thank you. Of course.
All right. So kind of jumping right in here, this is something I feel like you have spent a lot of time doing, and you, I'm going to say you're kind of the master at it. You know, you've got your finger on the pulse. You know what works and what doesn't. So when it comes to marketing budgets and kind of, you know, maybe they've gotten cut or maybe they're trying to figure out where they want to spend money. You know, it's January, or it's not January anymore. It's February. People are looking to kind of get the most out of those budgets. Where do you think companies should allocate their marketing budgets to kind of get that higher return? You know, should you be spending more time on social media or going to conferences or just some of those more traditional marketing channels?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a super frustrating answer, but it depends. So that's always the case. I think we've been in a tough market for a while, and so I've talked to a lot of brokers about kind of what's working, what's not working, and what I suggest when they're trying to make sure that they're just, because everybody's just, some companies are definitely thriving through this and picking up a lot of the shipment volume that is getting dropped by some of the companies that unfortunately have gone out of business. But I just suggest starting by taking a step back and making sure that your messaging is on point. What do you do really, really well? And make sure that whatever you're putting out there from a content perspective is really, really on point for what you're great at. And make sure that, it doesn't have to be, I think sometimes companies make the mistake of trying to hit all of those boxes that you're talking about, like be good on social media, go to more events, right? But there's a lot of money that can be wasted by doing all those things if you don't have the messaging correct. And you don't have to cast that wide of a net. It's actually good to go the opposite direction and be a little bit more narrow on what you know you do well. And you could literally just start with a good exercise for any marketer is sit down and just try to create one white paper about what your company is awesome at and get all your messaging nice and dialed in. Use ChatGPT to kind of maybe revise it, run it by maybe some of your close customers so they can tell you, hey, this is on point. Like this is what you guys do well. Because that means that whatever you do drive in off of that, you're going to be able to crush it, right? Then you can figure out, where do these types of customers that I tend to service really, really well, where do they hang out, right? If you got some data on it, that's obviously the best. But I actually suggest taking material like that and turning like a white paper into a nice little landing page on your website, and then creating some banner ads that have the same type of messaging, and then you can run Google ads on a very small budget and run a retargeting campaign. So if you can get some folks onto that website or onto that landing page, they will then see your banner ads everywhere, right? And so if that's what ends up working for you, right, then you'll start to know where, if you can capture that information in your CRM, like who is ending up on the website, that'll start to give you some data on where do those folks hang out. Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram, right? LinkedIn's been a really, they've gained a lot of steam in the last couple of years. So it's a good place to start.
I think that is something that's really, it's something that's really crucial. It's like you said, you can take those Google banner ads and you can take those Google ads and, you can run them for very, very cheap, like barely a drop in the bucket of your overall marketing budget. And I think that's one of the easier ways to get those views and to get those things across. Because there were carriers that I worked with that they didn't have a website. You just had to call John's phone number. But they were some of the best carriers I worked with. They were always on time. They sent everything in. I had zero problems with them, but they just didn't want to do any marketing. They didn't want to do that because they were busy enough by word of mouth. And I was like, okay, that's great. But like, how do I find an email address to send you things? And they're like, oh, you just call John's cell phone number and he'll read you an email address. And I'm like, okay, guys, can we take one step into the 21st century, please?
Yeah, well, and look, those folks that are doing really, really well with just the word of mouth, like I'm not necessarily even talking directly to them, because if you're doing well and everything's working, keep doing what you're doing. Don't, kind of talking to the folks that are, I guess, trying to maybe grind out the struggle where they've lost a little bit of business and they need to find a way to. But you're right. You should at this point, it's 2024. You should have a website. Like, even if you just use Squarespace and build a simple website, like make it so that people can find you online, right? Like if they were to see your business card, like there should be somewhere for them to go to learn at least a little bit more about you, even if it's one landing page, even if your whole website's one landing page. At least it's an online representation of who you are and what you think you do best.
I think that it's, again, I will not judge a Squarespace website. Some of those are pretty slick and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it, especially if you don't have a large budget to go have someone build you a custom website. Squarespace is perfect. It works. But the other thing that I would think that every website needs is obviously kind of that copy of that white paper you said of what you're really good at and what you strive at. And then also a contact us page, and also test that regularly so you know that it's going through, because that's also going to be the easiest way to get those leads, to get people who are already interested in working with you just kind of like in your lap.
Yeah, 100%. And it could literally be a form on the one landing page. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to overthink marketing. It's actually the more simple the better. Just direct messaging for who you can knock it out of the park with, right? You're just trying to talk to that one audience. Even if somebody else comes in and hates on your website or whatever, like, who cares, right? Like, that doesn't matter. Ignore those people and just talk to the folks that you are really like. If you just knock it out of the park with flatbed, just double down on that. Like, we're the best flatbed broker for this area, and give all the reasons why and all the things that customers care about, shippers care about.
So when it comes to kind of some of those more bang for your buck things, what are some of those? You touched on, Google banner ads and other things that you can do for not a lot of money. What are some of the things that have surprised you where you're like, let's just try this. Maybe it's $20 to $100 and you guys end up coming back with huge success. What are some of those kind of unique, slightly different things that you've tried outside of, maybe water bottles and swag at different career fairs and other stuff like that? Like, what are some of those cheaper ones that you're like, this worked out pretty well?
I think, because even when we talk about Google and retargeting, you could have like $100 a week budget on that, and it doesn't have to be too much. But that retargeting for the banners also includes your YouTube ads, YouTube retargeting, right? So if somebody does show any level of interest on your website and you are running a retargeting campaign, they'll not only see your banners, but if they are on YouTube, sorry about the pings, if they are on YouTube or anything like that, those pre-rolls that run before, and you can skip them, right? Like, before you get to watch your video, you could create a quick little, people don't necessarily care about, high quality is nice if you can get some high quality video going. It's great, but people don't really care about that. Like, we're in the day of like off the cuff, like people like this human to human. Everybody's craving authenticity these days, right? Like, there's so many lies and misinformation out there and all that kind of stuff, right? So people really appreciate just an authentic person being on camera and talking to them. So you could literally find the best looking person in your organization and just have them do a quick video about like what you do really, really well. Or if maybe you could get a couple testimonial videos from your customers, you can kind of cut those together on a pretty limited budget. There's all kinds of easy software out there. Now, if you have a budget, I do suggest like having somebody do that for you. Get a good quality going, but you don't have to overthink it. You could just literally get on and do a quick pitch on what you do well, and then, or maybe have a customer testimonial that draws somebody in, and if they click on it, they come to your website. Just make sure that you're set up for tracking, like, are you driving traffic to the website, right? Because if you are driving traffic to the website with all of these different tools and all of these different campaigns that you run, and it's not converting, then you know that maybe the content on the website isn't working, right? So that's kind of the pillars of marketing, is like, you got to drive traffic first, and then traffic you need to drive conversions on marketing qualified leads, and then you have to be able to close those on the sales side, right? So you need like to be able to spot where you're failing in those areas. So if you're not driving traffic, that means your content's not working, right? If there's nobody coming to that website that you're trying to drive traffic to, you got to change up your messaging. If you are driving traffic but nobody's converting, you got to change up that landing page, right? And if you are converting but no one's selling, then you got to retrain your salespeople, right? So that's kind of the way it works.
I feel like if you are getting people interested in on your website and like you just can't seal it on the other end, like those leads are literally falling into your lap. Like you have to make the most out of that.
Yeah, I agree. And when you have a little bit of extra budget, one of the mistakes I think a lot of, and this is not just brokers, but sales organizations across the board, sometimes they end up just hiring more salespeople. But if you know you've got a few solid salespeople, maybe take that extra budget where you were going to hire somebody else. If you're not doing really much marketing, test some marketing concepts. Marketing's just science. It's like, I have a hypothesis that if we write out this content and put it out there, that it will drive in leads, and then just have a way to measure it, right? And then record whether or not that worked or it didn't work. But if you have good salespeople already, just find a way to get more attention from more leads on their plate, and they'll close them for you if you trust them. If you don't, then you got to go the other way, obviously, and you got to retrain your salespeople, or you got to find a few good people that you can drive leads into.
Yeah, I think gone are the days of a medium-sized brokerage having a one-person marketing organization. I think that is I think you at least need a second one when you get above a small brokerage. I think you need to get that second person in there to kind of help generate some of that content.
I agree, and I think everybody should have at least a marketing person, because that marketing person that's on staff can work with an agency. Whatever your budget is, they can maximize it. A lot of people do very good in our industry word of mouth, and so keep doing that, right? But if you're trying to grow, or you're trying to move into an adjacent market, right? Like you're really good at flatbed, but you know your customers have some drive in they're not coming to you for, like, it's nice to have somebody on staff that can help you pivot into that and capture the full wallet of your client.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the kind of easiest ways to grow, is to kind of go back to those customers that they already love you. They already know that you're doing your job and you do it well. But you're like, hey, look, these are something else that we do that's outside of our normal specialized thing that we do for you. Like whether it's reefer, flatbed, bulk shipping, whatever, just like, hey, we also have this other thing that we do really well, in case you're curious. And I think that's kind of one of the other ways that, if your marketing team has that put together, that your sales team can then turn around and say, hey, give us a chance on this. Just like kind of how we got the chance in the first place. Give us a chance on this other one, and you'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and it might even work the other way, where that those folks are willing to give you the freight, right? But you have to market to the trucking companies, right? Like you may have to find a way to treat the trucking companies like they're your leads that you're trying to drive in, right? And if a lot of customers are going, hey, you do flatbed really well, but I have some dry van, can you take that too? You don't want to say no. You may have to put a little bit of marketing dollars into driving in a bunch of folks that run that lane and, have the equipment to beef up on your trucking network, so that you have folks to go to. Because you don't want to, you want to be able to say yes and then knock it out of the park, right? That's the goal. It's not uncommon to say yes and then post it on the load board and hope for the best. But if you can put look, it's not a bad strategy. Nobody wants to say no to business, but you also don't want to mess up on a good customer that's been working with you for a while. Like those are the folks that you can be honest with and say, hey, give me maybe a week and let me get back to you with some information on that. And then you run a campaign that tries to pull in more trucking companies that do drive in. And then you get a bunch of them, you talk to them, you feel like you can trust them, and you go back and you're able to kind of put together a full sales pitch that doesn't just get you one load. Because that's, I think, the thing that newer brokers make the mistake of, is just trying to whatever somebody's willing to throw your way, let me take it and run with it. Like I always suggest that when you're doing a sales pitch, you got to get like 5 or 10 loads committed. Like you need to talk to that shipper about like, hey, in order to really show you what I think we can do for you, can you give me like a good sample size that I can show you what we can do, and get 5. Don't just take the one that they're having trouble covering, right? Because you're now setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because honestly, if they're willing to part with one, it's not that much more difficult to get them to part with, 4 or like 1 a day for a week. Like Okay, because then if you mess up every single day that week, well, you've officially earned yourself a one-way ticket out of that business. But if you've thrived every single week, then you've proven that you can show up consistently and perform and arrive on time and everything that a shipper looks for in a good partner.
Absolutely.
All right, so it's day one. You slide into the marketing desk at a new freight brokerage. Let's say it's a small one. What is your? You already said that, like, start with that kind of white paper. What does that square one look like for potentially a new brokerage?
Yeah. If they're brand new and I'm the marketing person, I assume they're hopefully bringing on some folks that know what they're doing in terms of like actually brokering and winning new customers. But I'm going out and I'm talking to those sales folks. And this is actually true if I step into a larger brokerage that wants me to expand on what they're doing. But I'm going and I'm talking to those sales reps. When you're as a marketer, that's your goal. Like listening to the sales folks tell you about what the company does really well, right? And what they do well. And then going and doing some research on how many of these types of customers are there and what areas are they in. Because Google gets really, when you run those AdWord campaigns and stuff like that, you can get really geographical specific, and that's where you get a good amount of bang for your buck by being as targeted as you can. So I'm going and I'm talking to my sales reps, and then I'm trying to put together, I'm starting with that type of white paper that I'm talking about, where I'm just putting together all of the key points that we do well, and I'm working on my messaging for it, right? I'm trying to make sure that what I'm saying in what I'm going to put out in the market and ad copy is exactly what we can deliver on. And then I'm trying to find out how big is that market so that I can tell those sales folks or the higher ups or the owners that, hey, this market might not be big enough, or I want to know what I can expect as a return, right? Like I want to know exactly how big that market is and how much freight they move, because that'll help me determine what type of risk I should take on how much money I spend on the marketing side, right? Like if the market's not that big, then be careful about how much you're going to spend. You may carve out a nice little niche for yourself in that, but you want to slowly prove the concept of that, right? But if you know it's a really large market, then you may have to go a little harder on the spend. But that's okay if the market's big enough for you to get a return. If you know that you only need like 1% market share in a particular area for flatbed, then those are good odds, right? Like I can get 1%. If 1% builds your business, I mean, in some cases that's enough to, that's a good amount of revenue, 1%.
I think that that's kind of really important, is taking those steps. And this is something that in all the organizations I've worked in, sales and marketing have always hated each other. And I never understood why, because they have to work so closely to make sure that like everything is like delivering exactly what we promise across the board. And that's why I've never understood the like constant need to like fight each other on it, because I'm like, you guys, you can't exist without the other. Like you have to work together, but why do you hate each other so much?
I feel lucky. I was, when I came into Thai, I pretty much was very strong-headed that I'm going to run both, because I'm not going to let that type of environment form up, right? Because you're right, that does happen, and it just can't be that way. They should be best friends, sales and marketing, and that's what we try to do. We have a lot of communication internally. I would suggest every broker does that. Like, don't let, and you want to get buy-in, right? Because sometimes it's the more seasoned folks that know what they're doing on the sales side and a brokerage that are like, I don't really need you, right? You got to get their buy-in, right? Like you got to get them kind of sales and marketing aligned on what's our mission, what are we trying to accomplish, and what's in it for you, right? And what kind of success can we have together if we really get along? But it's just, it's absolute, because the marketers have to talk to the sales reps to know what is selling so that they can message. But then the marketers need to communicate, like, what was the campaign we ran? Because you need your salespeople to know what to expect. Like, hey, if this campaign works, we're going to get a bunch of leads that all want this specific thing. So be ready to talk about that, right? So that way you're just prepping them to not get caught off guard. And it allows them to buy in a little bit more. If you tell them like, hey, expect this type of lead and try to use these talking points, and then that starts working, everybody's happy. Everybody's really happy about working together.
It should always be sales and marketing versus like procurement, pricing, and operations, because the sales and marketing people will make a promise that everyone else has to deliver on, and they're like, this is great, we can't do this. But it should never be sales versus marketing. It should be them versus everybody.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, but like you definitely it's hard not to want to push your ops people to just like things you feel like I know you can do it though, right? Like I know it's hard, but I know like it's going to level up our whole company, but you do have to be willing to communicate that too, but you're right. Like
Yeah, it's one of those where like you just need one customer to push for it, and then they just change things a little, and then you can offer it to everyone else. But getting that one through, it's a lot of resistance, and you just got to keep chipping away at it and sit in all those meetings where people are like, this is silly. So as someone who's been the one going, this is silly, it ends up working out okay, but it's just a lot of to start.
Yeah. Well, it's scary facing some situation you don't understand very well. So that's why obviously it goes without saying that communication across your organization on what you're trying to accomplish is important. Training the ops people on what you know what I mean? Yeah. So
yeah, I would say that part is like the most crucial part, instead of just like, oh, we're going to go live with this brand new customer tomorrow. And by the way, you need to redo every single thing that you do for everyone else. And you're like, thanks. Love it. All right. So that being said, we are running out of time today, and we know where you stand on quite a few issues. So it's only fitting that since we've asked Mitch what his superpower would be, it's time to move to you. If you could have any superpower, but it only worked on Wednesday, what would it be?
I remember you asking Mitch about this, so I've gotten a little bit of time to think about it. And I think I want to say teleportation. That I could be anywhere on Wednesdays. And I would want to take it just a step further and say that anybody whose hand I'm holding also gets teleported with me, right? So that but I think about how busy I am on Wednesdays running around talking to different teams. And I would love to be able to do all of those meetings in person, right? And I guess if you want to turn it into like a more of a benefit for humanity, I'm sure I could wherever there's service work needed, I could teleport there too. Of course, I'm thinking business mostly, but
I mean, I also kind of like it because you could go through all of those. You could go through all those meetings, and then if you just want to like go to Italy for dinner, you can just teleport yourself to Italy, and you can have pasta like at a random thing, and then teleport yourself back home just in time for bed. Like
exactly. Yeah, and that's why I said I have to be able to whoever I'm holding hands with, because I can't go to Italy and have dinner and not take my wife with me. I think it would really put a damper on my superpower if I can't go anywhere, because my wife's like, hey, you can't just go to Italy without me. What the hell?
Yeah, I think you would have to do like takeout, where you would have to go to Italy, get the pasta food, and then teleport it back, hoping that it still stays warm, or the Chinese takeout down the street or whatever. Yeah, that would really kind of harsh the vibe of the superpower. All right, so if anyone has any questions about where the best place to teleport to on Wednesdays is or if they have any questions kind of about making the most of their marketing budget, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and we've been trying to do a little bit more posting marketing type stuff for brokers that could be helpful. But you can also go to tie-software.com if you're interested in Tie TMS. And yeah, those are the two best spots.
Awesome. I love it. You guys heard it here first. Sean's DMs are open. So I'm looking forward to some really great things to pop into those. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mary.
You can check all the podcasts anywhere else you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts. And you can subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.